Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking Metal Gear Solid. Today I'm joined by fellow YouTuber MastRcube, and we're going to be discussing a range of topics covering all things Metal Gear Solid. So I can't wait to go ahead with this video.
Actually, it's ironic that I'm actually having a conversation with you because I started watching your channel back like on your second video. Like it was like the 2020, I think is when it was.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I found your channel. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome!" So
brilliant.
I just started kind of just picking up on it. I didn't subscribe back then, but like I think by the I want to say like the sixth video, I was like subscribed.
Oh, awesome! I had no idea. Yeah, because I think I remember you popped up in one of my streams once. I think I was streaming Metal Gear Solid 5 or something. But that's awesome. I had no idea that. That's the thing about YouTube. You never know who's kind of watching and checking out your channel before they subscribe. So, but yeah, thanks for supporting for so long.
Yeah, no problem. It'd be great content. So I
thank
appreciate you doing that. I know how much of a pain it is to edit and put some of this stuff together. So.
Yeah.
All right. So what is your story behind how your first Metal Gear game? Like, how did you get that game? Like, what's the whole backstory behind it?
Yeah. So the first kind of time I ever saw Metal Gear Solid was I was visiting my uncle and walking to his house, and he was just playing the first Metal Gear Solid game, and it was the second boss battle with Sniper Wolf. So amongst like the snowy trees and stuff like that. And like I was seeing like the PSG scope and all that, and I saw a bit of the codec call as well.
What year was that? I'm just curious.
Well, I think the game came out in 98, or I think it might come out in 99 in the UK. I think we got it a year later in Europe. So it was probably around that time. I think it was pretty new. He was quite into his gaming, so I think he probably would have picked it up pretty early. So yeah, 99 or maybe 2000. So I saw that and I was like, this looks so good. And I happened to then, maybe I don't know how much later, but I got a demo disc for the VR missions game, just from a PlayStation magazine, and I just kept playing the hell out of that. And then eventually got my hands on the game. I was quite young at the time. I must have been about 9. No. Yeah, probably about 9 around the time. And I can't remember if my parents bought it for me or how exactly I got it, but I just had it at some point. And I just played it and just loved it. I think at that age I just thought it was the coolest game I'd ever played. Like you got like Snake is a really cool protagonist, and all the bosses were like just so cool in different ways. Revolver Ocelot spinning the guns, and Sniper Wolf, Psycho Mantis. I loved it. It got its claws in me, and I was hooked. And just pretty much ever since it's still to this day. I think the first game is probably my favorite game of all time. And I'm not necessarily saying there's not better games out there, but I think just the impact it had on me at that time, no other games hit me that hard. So it's despite it being maybe a dated game in some ways, I love it to bits. Like it's just incredible. And then obviously just went on to play the rest of the series. But how about you?
It's kind of funny. I would say I got the game probably trying to figure out how old I was when I ended up playing it. So I was a Nintendo kid, and I didn't have a PlayStation until I was a little older. And when I actually had to get the PlayStation myself. And when I picked up the console, I picked up like a couple of games. And one of them was Tomorrow Never Dies, which is a terrible game. Don't play that game.
No GoldenEye.
Yeah, exactly. And then what was the other games I picked up? I think I picked up Siphon Filter, which is actually a pretty good game.
Classic. Yeah.
And a friend of my mom's, he came by and he sold all of his PlayStation stuff, and he's like, "Oh, I got some games. I'm going to give them to you." And I was like, "Okay, I'll take the games." Like, "You need to play this game." And he's like, "It is the coolest. It's like playing a movie." And I'm like, oh, "Okay, because what does that really mean?"
Yeah.
And so he gives it to me, and I pop it in, and we're sitting there looking at it. And he's like telling me like, "Oh, it's going to do something real cool," and the controller starts shaking when the hind D flies by, and I'm like, wow, this game is really different than most of the games I've ever played.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Nintendo doesn't have a lot of, particularly in the Nintendo 64, didn't have a lot of cinematic things going on in it.
Yeah.
So when I played that, it was like this plot line, this story, the gameplay to cinema ratio, like the whole thing as a package, the voice acting, it blew me away. I'm like, I didn't know you could make a game quite like that.
Yeah.
And when I experienced it, I was like, this is by far one of my favorite games I've ever played. And then it's just, the series is my favorite series. And like, I cannot imagine trying to fill the holes in my life that Metal Gear has filled, because throughout all my life, I've been playing these games, and it's been great. I mean, the first time I played a Metal Gear game wasn't Metal Gear Solid, actually. It was, and I didn't even know what it was. It was originally the NES game.
Yeah.
And it's not the same thing. It's okay, but I played it, and I don't know, I was probably 6, maybe. And I couldn't figure out how to get past the stupid dogs. And so I just got mad, and I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 6, whatever. But that's basically like my introduction to the series. And it's kind of sad. But that one that was given to me by my mom's friend, I lent it to a friend of mine, because this goes back to that thing that you and Luffy were talking about. Don't lend out your video games, which you should not. I lent it to him, and I also lent Grand Theft Auto Vice City to another friend, but I never got Metal Gear back, and I was so upset. Man. So I was like, for a while, I'm like, I've been looking for like a pristine copy, and I had to I found one that had like a good disc, but like disc 2 was messed up. So I like pieced together my copy of it now, which is, it's pretty good condition. It's got the book, it's got everything in it now.
Yeah.
But it's not my original copy, and it sucks.
That's so annoying. Yeah, when that happens. Yeah, like you said, when on the episode I did with Luffy. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I wonder now if kids do lend games to each other, because I feel like with like digital games, probably you can't really do that, and I just don't hear about that anymore. But it definitely comes with its cons. So maybe it's good that they
cool
kind of
take it over. Yeah, you can take it over, but you take it back with you when you leave. Don't leave it there. You may never see it again.
Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, I mean, that's it sounds, your kind of story about just the first time experience it, I just relate to it so much. Like, it's kind of weird when I talk about it, and like hearing what your story, I'm like, oh yeah, that's how I felt too. Like, there's so many elements of that game. I remember, like, it's kind of sounds kind of depressing, but it was the first game where I felt sad playing a game at times, and I think like on one of my, maybe my first, or I think it was my first playthrough, was when, spoilers, Meryl dies. I failed the torture scene. I
think everybody fails that first time. I failed it.
I was like, how the hell do you do this? But yeah, I mean, that scene when Meryl dies, obviously it's not canon anymore. That was like hard to watch at that age, and that was another thing where I was like, games can do this.
Legitimately felt like a failure, and it was terrible. I was like, I failed this poor person. I know exactly what you're saying.
That was another thing where I'd never felt that in a game up until that point, and even like Sniper Wolf's death scene, that was so groundbreaking. It's been talked about many times, but the fact that, like, prior to that, when you beat a boss in the game, it's like a victory. I beat the boss, on to the next level. This, you beat Sniper Wolf, and it's like, what have I done? Like, this person had a horrible upbringing, was kind of forced into this life, and I've had to just like kill her because it's the mission. Like, that was just like, that was something else. I think that no other series has, I can't think of another series even today that's kind of had that same impact with beating a boss. There probably are examples, but like definitely nothing that stayed as much as that. Definitely.
Yeah, nothing is impactful. It's had it, but I think I talked about this at one point. Like often mimicked, but never reproduced. Like it's hard to really reproduce that original aspect of it.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's what makes the original Metal Gear so unique. Even if they're trying to reproduce it with the Twin Snakes, the Sniper Wolf scene in Twin Snakes isn't as good as the original Sniper Wolf scene.
No.
Partly because of the music, but there's something about the way the delivery of the lines and the way the music cuts in and everybody comes running up at particular moments. Well, when Emmerich comes up, but
I don't even, like that's literally same voice actors, like you said, the music's different, which I think the music is such a huge part of that scene. I think it's called Enclosure. I think the song is. It's kind of like one of those lightning in the bottle moments where you just can't capture that again. Like they caught it back in, I don't know, 97 when they're probably recording it. It's so unique.